The conservative pundit. Ben Shapiro, who is renowned for his incisive debates, is accused of destroying actress Blake Lively in a 7-point dispute. Even if the title may seem dramatic, it's crucial to consider the context and content of these conversations in order to distinguish fact from fiction. Let's dissect it. Number 7. Hypocrisy on intellectual property IP rights. Shapiro would then embark into a harsh indictment of Lively's seeming inconsistency about intellectual property. He would point out that Lively has made a living off of making money off of corporately owned intellectual property like Deadpool, even as she supports Robin Lee's lawsuit against Amazon MGM and producers for allegedly stealing the idea of you. The absurdity of her promoting artistic integrity while starring in a property that Disney Marvel has brutally commercialized, frequently at the expense of the original creator's vision, would be brought to light by Shapiro. He'd why Lively isn't similarly concerned about how Deadpool's source material created by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza has been edited for popular appeal, with its darker, more violent tone softened for a broader audience. He would. Number 6. Misunderstanding legal precedent. Shapiro would painstakingly analyze Robin Lee's lawsuits, such as Snow White and The Little Mermaid, to make the case that Lively's selective outrage is more about appearances than principle. It's easy to play the rebel, he would say, when your paycheck. Legally speaking, Lee's assertion that the movie stole the soul of her book is baseless. In order to demonstrate how even successful plagiarism accusations require verifiable proof of copied melodies or language, rather than he would clarify that precise statements, not concepts, themes, or vibes, are protected by U.S. copyright law. Legally speaking, Lee's assertion that the movie stole the soul of her book is baseless. Certainly gave up the right to adaptation in her contract. He would advise against selling the rights to studios for a quick profit if you don't want them altering your work. However, leftists in Hollywood enjoy pointing the finger upon capitalism for issues that benefit them. Number 5. Hollywood elitism versus creator rights. That Lee most certainly gave up the right to adaptation in her contract. He would advise against selling the rights to studios for a quick profit if you don't want them altering your work. However, while she claims solidarity with Lee, Shapiro would contrast Lively's privilege starring in studio tentpoles, married A-lister Ryan Reynolds with Lee's struggle as a mid-list novelist. Studios frequently option books for pennies, typically $5,000 to $50,000, with no assurance of production. He might and then fire authors after celebrities like Lively sign on. He would contend, this isn't about ethics. It's about Lively using her clout to hijack a project while the original creator gets crumbs versus creator rights. Shapiro would depict Lively as the personification of Hollywood's Nepo baby aristocracy. She's the daughter of actor Ernie Lively. Gatekeeping possibility. Number 4. Performative woke advocacy. Shapiro would accuse Lively of adopting social justice rhetoric to cover up her own self-interest and link her position to Hollywood's woke industrial complex. He would question why she is supporting Lee, a relatively privileged author with a Yale education, but remaining mute about the systematic exploitation of underprivileged authors. Lively sign on. He would contend, this isn't about ethics. It's about Lively using her clout to hijack a project while the original creator gets crumbs. He could even accuse Lively of selectively virtue signaling by pointing to Amazon's $200 million Lord of the Rings series, which disregarded J.R.R. Tolkien's for authors. In addition, he would make fun of her for criticizing artistic theft, although she had optioned a single book written by an unidentified author, indicating that her support is theoretical rather than practical. Woke rhetoric is just the icing on the cake of hypocrisy. Number 3. Financial motivations over principles. In order to support his claim that Lively's lawsuit attitude is financially motivated, Shapiro would analyze her professional decisions. The date of the case coincides nicely with her. He would question why she is supporting Lee, a relatively privileged author with a Yale education, but remaining mute about the systematic exploitation of underprivileged authors. He would compare her action to Disney's use of underpaid visual by portraying herself as a creator's ally. Shapiro can point out that Lively's production firm, B for Effort, hasn't optioned any books written by unidentified authors yet, indicating that her support is just theoretical and not practical. Or unionized residuals for authors. In addition, he would make fun of her for criticizing artistic theft, although she was a star of The Age of Adeline, a movie that was accused of copying The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Anger. Shapiro may even bring up her husband Ryan Reynolds' astute business strategies such as Mint Mobile and Aviation Gin, to imply that Lively is using controversy. Shapiro may even bring up her silence on Disney's monopolistic control over intellectual property. A screenplay option contract, he would explain. Number 2. Stifling creative risk-taking. Shapiro would argue that cases like Lee's stifle creativity and support Hollywood's freedom to adapt works. Motivated, Shapiro would analyze her professional decisions. The date of the case coincides nicely with her Deadpool and Wolverine publicity tour in 2024, a happenstance he would refer to as PR alchemy. She diverts it. He would argue that we would never get bold reinventions like The Boys or Joker if every deviation from the source material triggered lawsuits. He would blame Lively for encouraging a culture in which artists are afraid of facing legal repercussions for rewriting stories, which inhibits the creative risk-taking that is essential to art. Theoretical and not practical. Additionally, he would hypothesize that her criticism of producers might be a power move. She positions herself to demand higher pay and creative control in future deals by painting studios as villains. The oldest Hollywood ploy is making 50 Shades of Grey, which started out as Twilight fanfiction. He would argue, the purpose of art is not to preserve the soul of a story. The goal is to evolve it. However, Lively and other Hollywood elites would rather fight than create. Number 1. Leveraging drama for personal branding. Lastly, Shapiro would portray Lively's whole story as a cynical rebrand. Shapiro would argue that cases like Lee's stifle creativity and support Hollywood's freedom to adapt works. He would gesture towards Deadpool itself. Rob Liefeld's initial comic persona was a rough, bloody anti-hero, but he became a worldwide tactic. However, Shapiro would point to her reticence on other significant issues such as Disney's monopolistic grip over intellectual property or Amazon's labor practices as evidence that her advocacy is merely superficial. Blame Lively for encouraging a culture in which artists are afraid of facing legal repercussions for rewriting stories, which inhibits the creative risk-taking that is essential to art. Shakespeare would laugh if his estate filed a lawsuit each time, he would say, as he ended with his trademark zinger. The key to Shapiro's downfall would be revealing Lively's inconsistencies and portraying her as a victim of corporate intellectual property exploitation disguised as a grassroots creative advocate. He would portray her behavior as performative, driven. The purpose of art is not to preserve the soul of a story. The goal is to evolve it. However, racism would combine pop culture allusions, legal research, and inflammatory language to portray her position as unimportant activism.